Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to completely conquer any math anxiety you might have because we're uncovering exactly how raw, messy data transforms into actual life-saving medical decisions. If you've ever heard the word statistics and immediately pictured complicated formulas or endless mind-numbing calculations, I want you to just take a deep breath. Forget all that. Today, we're looking at something much more powerful. We are looking at the absolute bedrock of modern medicine. Because here's the truth. Every single medicine prescribed, every vaccine approved, and every surgical procedure introduced is fundamentally based on what we are about to explore. So, don't worry about the complicated math. Here is our clear, step-by-step roadmap to unlocking this ultimate medical toolkit. We'll start with the language of evidence, then break down the anatomy of data, look at populations versus samples, figure out how to summarize our findings, predict the big picture, and finally, we'll dive into some real-world life-saving applications.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the language of evidence from guesswork to knowing.
Picture this. A doctor develops a brand new medicine for diabetes and gives it to 200 patients. How can they actually know if it works? Should doctors rely on gut feelings, assumptions, or just raw guesses to treat people? No way, right? Absolutely not. When testing a new drug, relying on feelings instead of cold, hard evidence is incredibly dangerous. Without a heavily structured way to measure things like blood glucose before and after a treatment, medicine just becomes guesswork. We have to know if an improvement is real or if it literally just happened by chance.
Now, you really have to beware the trap of raw numbers. Consider this comparison. Hospital A boasts a 95% survival rate after heart surgery, while Hospital B reports only an 88% survival rate. Well, at first glance, Hospital A seems like the obvious winner, right? That is, until you realize they only treated 20 patients. Meanwhile, Hospital B treated 10,000 patients, and many of them had far more severe diseases. This is exactly why we can't just take numbers at face value. We need a fair, rigorous way to compare them.
And that brilliantly illustrates why we need biostatistics. By definition, biostatistics is the science of collecting, organizing, analyzing, interpreting, and presenting biological, medical, and health-related data. It's literally the language of scientific evidence that protects us all from medical guesswork. It answers the vital questions. Does this new drug actually work better? Which treatment has fewer side effects? It takes all that chaotic, real-world information and turns it into clear, actionable truth.
Moving right along to part two, the anatomy of data, categorizing our evidence.
The very first thing every researcher has to understand is that data essentially splits into two main camps. On one side, we have qualitative data, also known as categorical data. This describes qualities, things like gender, nationality, or blood group. On the other side, we have quantitative data, which involves hard numbers that can be measured, like your age, height, or blood pressure. And just as a funny reminder about qualitative data, you obviously cannot calculate an average blood group. You can't mathematically smash blood group A and blood group B together and get a meaningful number.
Now, zooming in on that quantitative numbers game, we further divide things into discrete and continuous data. Discrete data involves whole numbers only, like the number of children in a family or the number of bone fractures. You count them. Continuous data, however, can have decimal values, like your exact body temperature or your BMI. This distinction is so important because it prevents absurd impossibilities in research, like someone claiming a hospital ward currently has exactly 3.5 patients. Think of data measurement like climbing a staircase. We start at the bottom with the nominal level. These are simple names with no order, like religion or nationality. Then we step up to ordinal, where there is a clear order, like a pain score from mild to severe, but the gaps between those scores aren't perfectly equal. Next up is interval, where we do have equal intervals, but no true zero. Think temperature in Celsius. Finally, we reach the top tier, ratio. This level has equal intervals and a true zero, giving us complex, math-ready numbers like income, weight, or age, where you can actually use multiplication and division.
Okay, let's get into part three, populations, samples, and variables, finding the focus.
This is honestly one of the most important concepts in all of research. Let's say you want to study the entire population of Pakistan. That is a staggering 240 million people. If your goal is to know the average blood pressure of the entire country, it is completely 100% impossible to measure every single citizen. You would literally never finish, and it would cost an absolute fortune. So here's the crucial workaround. Instead of trying to study the entire population, we randomly choose a much smaller, highly manageable sample group, say 1,000 people. If they're selected correctly, these 1,000 individuals will accurately represent that massive population of 240 million. So remember, the population is the huge group you care about, but the sample is the smaller group you actually measure.
And within that sample of 1,000 people, what exactly are we looking for? Well, we look for variables. A variable is simply anything that changes from person to person. Think about it. Everyone tuning into this explainer right now has a totally different age, a different weight, or a different educational background. Because these traits vary from individual to individual, they are our variables. Measuring them is how we start to uncover the hidden patterns in medicine.
Next up, Part 4, Summarizing the Story, Descriptive Statistics.
So, the most common way people try to summarize data is by finding the average, or the mean. But take a look at these 5 monthly incomes. We have 4 pretty typical incomes right in that 20 to 30,000 range. And then boom, one massive 500,000 outlier. If you calculate the mean here, that single extreme value completely crashes the average, making it look like everyone in the group is rich. This proves exactly why the median, which is simply finding the middle number when they're lined up in order, is a much safer bet for skewed data. It keeps things realistic.
The truth is, averages alone just aren't enough. Imagine 2 classrooms that both have an exact average test score of 80. Class A's scores are tightly clustered right between 78 and 82. But Class B's scores are wildly spread out, ranging all the way from 20 to 100. This is where standard deviation reveals the true story. A small standard deviation proves Class A is super consistent, while a large one shows Class B is totally all over the place, even though they have the exact same average on paper.
Let's move to Part 5, Predicting the Big Picture, Inferential Statistics.
You might be wondering, can you really study just 500 patients and confidently draw conclusions about 5 million?
Yes, you absolutely can.
Researchers use these incredibly powerful inferential statistics tools, things like hypothesis testing, confidence intervals, regression, and t-tests, to do exactly this. For example, if a medical team runs a vaccine trial with just 1,000 participants, they use these inferential methods to accurately estimate if that vaccine is going to protect millions of people out in the real world. It's the vital bridge between a small experiment and global medical policy.
And finally, Part 6, Real-World Life-Saving Applications, Why Statistics Matters. You really don't have to look far into the past to see all of this in action. During the COVID-19 pandemic, biostatistics was literally on the front lines. Calculating infection rates, determining risk factors, modeling transmission patterns, and proving vaccine efficacy using these exact statistical methods, that was the only thing that made pandemic control possible. Without biostatistics actively mapping out the invisible spread of the virus, our global health responses would have been completely blind.
I want you to really think about this quote for a second. Data alone do not answer research questions. A massive spreadsheet full of numbers does absolutely nothing on its own. It is biostatistics that transforms that raw, chaotic data into reliable scientific evidence. It's the engine that enables healthcare professionals to actually make informed, confident decisions that improve patient care and protect public health.
Which brings us to the end of our journey through the language of scientific evidence. Every single clinical trial, every cancer research breakthrough, and every approved medication on your pharmacy shelf relies on this incredible process of sampling, variables, and inferential prediction. So I want to leave you with a final thought to spark your curiosity. Every single prescribed medicine you take is a statistical victory. The next time you pop a pill to cure a headache or fight off an infection, ask yourself, whose data saved your life today? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking questions.